I remember the way the evening sky looked as we stepped out of the car, a deep indigo fading into the first hints of night, and how the city lights of downtown San Diego shimmered behind us through the glass railings. Aubrey's tiny hand curled around mine, her pink flats clicking softly against the rooftop's polished concrete. She had practiced that curtsy all afternoon, her cheeks rosy with excitement. So when the host welcomed us, she gave her best royal bow, and I felt a surge of pride. Naomi wore a flowing emerald dress that caught light in every fold. Bianca, on the other hand, was incandescent in white lace, the engagement ring on her finger glittering like a promise. I felt at ease, even delighted. This was meant to be a celebration of family, laughter, and new beginnings. Instead, it became the night I lost my illusion of who they really were. The punch bowl sat at a low table near a cluster of velvet chairs, its crimson liquid shimmering with floating lemon slices. Aubrey toddled over, her hand still in mine, and pointed at the bowl with glee. Naomi leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and whispered, "Let her have one. Just a sip." She looked so grown up. I smiled and nodded, watching Aubrey lift the plastic cup with both hands, tipping it carefully until a drop of punch brushed her lips. Her eyes widened, and she giggled. That was the moment, an accidental slip of the cup, the last fraction of control thrown aside. Punch spilled across the table, splattering against a decorative pillow and striking Bianca's lace sleeve like a paint bomb. Time slowed. Liquid arced through the air, droplets catching the rooftop lights, and then Bianca's face twisted with rage instead of concern or amusement. Her hand shot out before reason could catch up, an open palm moving faster than thought. I saw it in slow motion. Her fingers stretched wide, the rebound of her wrist sending her lace sleeve fluttering, and Aubrey's eyes going wide with shock. Then impact. A crack of sound that wasn't just flesh against flesh, but hope against betrayal. My daughter reeled backward, little body tipping onto the cool concrete, tears welling up instantly. I felt a cold shock in my chest and froze, one foot rooted while my mind scrambled for comprehension. Bianca stood over Aubrey, chest heaving, her face drenched in fury. I opened my mouth to scream, to step forward, but nothing came out. The guests around us gasped, and for a moment I thought someone would intervene. But the air stayed still, like breath held and never released. Naomi's parents, Darlene and Gerald, were 10 feet away, perfectly poised. Darlene lifted a manicured hand to her lips as if to shush me, her eyes flicking contemptuously between my fallen daughter and me. Gerald's expression was a mask of indifference, no hint of paternal concern in his cold gaze. My heart thundered so loud I thought it would break through my ribs. I watched Bianca's chest rise and fall rapidly, as though she, too, might realize the enormity of what she had done. Instead, she looked up at Naomi's mother, seeking approval for her violence. Before I could move, Darlene pointed a perfect, jewel-ring finger right at us. "You people ruin everything," she sneered, voice low enough that most guests didn't catch the words. But I did. Every fiber of me clenched at the insult. Naomi stood still, shoulders shaking, but she did not rush to her daughter's side. She did not put a hand on Aubrey's shoulder or pull Bianca back. She watched, frozen, as if weighing the cost of choosing between her sister and her child. I looked at her, searching her face for a trace of the Naomi I had married 10 years ago, the woman who would have shielded us without hesitation. That woman was gone, replaced by someone yoked to the whims of an unforgiving family. Security staff materialized at Darlene's subtle wave. 2 burly men in dark suits advanced toward us, not with concern for Aubrey, but with the air of escorting dangerous intruders from a gala. I scooped Aubrey into my arms. She sobbed against my chest, tears dampening my shirt. I brushed her hair from her face and told her softly, "It's okay, baby. Daddy's got you." She pressed her face into my collar, small body shaking, and I felt the world shift beneath my feet. The music resumed, dirtier for the note of violence ringing through the rooftop, and guests returned to their conversations, as if this were a terribly awkward hiccup instead of a monstrous breach of trust. We moved away from the table, my arm tied around Aubrey's waist, Naomi trailing behind silently. I expected an apology from my wife, a breath of regret. Instead, I heard only the muffled chatter of friends speculating about what they'd seen. I carried Aubrey to a corner lined with potted palms, pressing damp napkins gently against her cheek. She sniffled once, looked up at me with big, brimming eyes, and whispered, "Why did she hit me?" My throat tightened. She lost her temper," I said haltingly. "But that's okay. You didn't mean to spill. And you're not in trouble." She nodded, trusting me to tell her the truth. I kissed the top of her head and promised, "We're going to make this right." Behind me, Naomi's mother approached, heels clicking on the concrete. Darlene's expression was pure disdain. "You'll leave now," she said softly, though I heard the steel in her tone. Gerald stood behind her, arms folded, silent sentinel to our disgrace. I glanced back at Naomi, saw her lips pressed together, eyes darting between her mother and me. She said nothing. I took Aubrey's hand and stood. "Yes," I replied, voice steady. "We'll go." As we walked toward the elevator, I looked once more at Bianca, pale and trembling, and at Naomi's parents, rigid with scorn. In that instant, I understood the depth of their cruelty and how easily family ties could be twisted to punish innocence. I pressed a kiss to Aubrey's temple, murmured, "I love you," and carried her out of the rooftop that had glittered with promise just moments before. The doors closed, and the night swallowed us whole, leaving behind an echo of slaps and silence I would never forget. Before I could even kneel and help Aubrey to her feet, I heard the hiss. "You people ruin everything." The words slithered through the air like smoke, leaving an acrid taste in my mouth. I turned my head and locked eyes with Darlene, Naomi's mother, her finger pointed directly at us, her eyes flashing with something that wasn't just anger, it was disdain. Her perfect red lips curled into a sneer, and in that moment, she wasn't a concerned grandmother or a matriarch in crisis. She was a woman protecting her brand, her version of family, and my daughter had cracked it. Gerald stood beside her, silent, towering, with that same stonewall expression he wore during every major family decision. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just gave a subtle flick of his wrist, like he was swatting away a mosquito. That tiny gesture summoned 2 security guards from the edge of the event. They didn't rush, they didn't need to. The message was loud enough in the silence that followed. I was crouched by Aubrey, my hands still cupping her cheek as she sobbed into her small, trembling hands. The world had gone quiet, no music, no laughter, just the soft murmur of onlookers trying to make sense of what they'd seen but not bold enough to say a word. Naomi stood between her sister and her daughter, frozen like a statue, lips slightly parted, her hands twitching as if she wanted to do something but couldn't make herself move. "Naomi," I said, low and sharp, "say something." But she didn't. Not to her mother. Not to Bianca. Not to me. I picked up our daughter, holding her close, her body shaking against mine. Her pink flats dangled from her feet, one of them almost slipping off as I walked. The crowd parted around us, still silent. A few people looked away. A few raised their phones again. Maybe they were already filming the aftermath, turning us into content without our consent. No one said, "That was wrong." No one said, "Stop." No one said, "Let the child stay." And Naomi didn't say, "That's my daughter." That was the part that broke me. I walked out, past the white pillars of the rooftop bar, past the photo booth station with its fake roses and gold glitter backdrop, past the bartender, who blinked at me like he wasn't sure whether he should offer another drink or say goodbye. Down the elevator we went, Aubrey nestled into my neck, her breathing uneven. Her cheek was red, puffy. Every time I glanced at it, rage threatened to rise in my chest like bile. I held it back for her. She needed calm. Not a father who broke down now. The car was parked in the underground lot. I buckled her in, whispering to her, "You're okay, baby. I'm here." She gave the smallest nod, still dazed, then curled against the seat like she was trying to make herself disappear. My hands trembled as I shut the door and walked around to the driver's side. I sat behind the wheel, the engine humming, my mind racing. How had it come to this? 10 minutes ago, I'd been the proud father of the sweetest little girl at a rooftop party. Now, I was the outsider, the problem, the man holding a crying child who was being treated like a trespasser in his own family. As I reached for a tissue from the glove box to wipe the tears from Aubrey's cheek, my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again. And again. I pulled it out and stared at the screen. Gerald Brooks, incoming call. I nearly declined it, but something in me paused. Gerald didn't call. Not unless there was an agenda. I answered, phone to ear, ready to unleash hell. But what greeted me on the other end was not the steady, superior voice I'd come to expect. It was trembling. Is it online? That was all he said. No hello. No apology. Just fear. I sat back in my seat, watching the faint green glow of the parking garage lights dance on the hood of our car. Gerald, I said quietly, you're going to have to be more specific. What are you talking about? There was a beat of silence, then a breath. The video. The footage. It's everywhere. Every angle. Someone must have streamed it or tagged it. What the hell did you do? What did I do? I repeated, my voice sharpening. Your daughter slapped my 10-year-old in front of 200 people. Your wife called us a disease. And your security goons escorted a crying child out like she was a bar fight in heels. So tell me again what you think I did. Take it down, he said, his voice barely controlled. This will ruin everything. That depends, I said, heart thudding. Everything for who? I could hear the muffled noise of voices in the background. Darlene, I assumed, and probably Bianca, shrieking about damage control. I imagined them frantically trying to scrub the internet, to push some narrative that would soften the blow. But it was too late. I hadn't shared anything yet, but others had. Bianca was an influencer. Her entire life was curated for cameras, and tonight was no different. Her engagement party had been live-streamed. That meant multiple angles, pristine resolution, and timestamps. The slap, the silence, the snarl on Darlene's face. Naomi, frozen like a marble statue. It had all gone out before anyone could stop it. You made a mistake, Gerald, I said, voice low. And 10 minutes ago, I told you, you'd regret it. He sputtered something about protecting the family, about handling this internally, about being reasonable, but I wasn't interested in reasonable anymore. Let me be very clear, I said. You people didn't just break a little girl's heart. You showed her that love in this family is conditional, based on silence, based on control, based on playing your game. But I'm done playing. Don't do this, Gerald warned. You'll destroy her. She did that herself, I said. We're not your problem anymore. We're your consequence. I ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Aubrey stirred behind me, and I looked back through the rearview mirror. Her eyes met mine, still red but steady. Are we going home now? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, we are. She gave a small smile. Good. As I pulled out of the parking garage, I felt something shift in me, not just anger, not just grief. It was clarity. That night, everything changed. The illusion of family. The idea that silence kept peace. I'd seen it fall apart in real time, and I wasn't going to pick up the pieces. I was going to build something new. For her. As I pulled into the driveway of my brother Damon's townhouse, Aubrey was already asleep in the back seat, her head slumped against the side of the booster. Her hair clung to her cheeks, dried tears still marking the quiet curve of her face. I killed the engine, leaned back in my seat, and exhaled slowly. The weight of everything that had just happened pressed against my chest like a boulder. But I didn't feel powerless. Not this time. The night had ended with a child in tears, but it wasn't going to stay that way. Not with what I had. 10 minutes before I left that rooftop, I told Gerald, you'll regret this. 10 minutes from now. I knew what I was doing. I knew what was coming. I reached for my phone and unlocked it, tapping into the live stream archives. Bianca's party had been broadcast live across 3 different influencer platforms, her own, her fiancé Logan's, and her best friend Tiffany's. A trio of camera tripods had been set up around the rooftop, capturing every filtered, choreographed angle of the event. And all 3 were still archived in full resolution glory. I tapped into Tiffany's stream first. She'd gone live from her phone, tagging every guest and panning the crowd relentlessly. I scrubbed forward, timestamped by memory. 8:46 p.m. That's when Aubrey spilled the punch. And there it was. Unedited. No commentary. Just the raw, unbearable truth. Aubrey's small frame tipping the plastic cup. The crimson splash across Bianca's sleeve. Bianca's reaction, not shock, not concern, but fury. Her hand flying. My daughter's stunned collapse. The audible gasps. The silence. Darlene's hissed insult. And perhaps worst of all, Naomi, wide-eyed and unmoving, rooted to the ground like fear had bolted her in place. I replayed the clip once. Twice. By the 3rd time, I felt numb. I downloaded the full footage. Then I opened my cloud drive. One I used for work projects and freelance video edits. I uploaded the video into a folder labeled Aubrey Incident Evidence. From there, I set up restricted viewing access and sent it to 3 email addresses: mine, my lawyer cousin Jalen, and my brother Damon. Backups mattered. Only after that did I switch to the messaging apps. The footage was already leaking. People were posting phone videos, trying to crop out faces, but the original streams hadn't been pulled yet. Bianca and her circle probably didn't realize the sheer size of the audience they had drawn in. Not just friends, not just fans, but observers, mothers, fathers, journalists, activists. By the time I refreshed my social media feed, the hashtag Justice for Aubrey was already trending. It started with a teacher who had been watching the stream live. She clipped the moment the slap landed and wrote, "This is what happens when ego is prioritized over compassion. This is a child." The post had over 50,000 shares in under an hour. Then came a pediatric nurse, then a father from Chicago, then an LA-based celebrity mom who reposted the video with, "Unacceptable. If you stay silent watching this, you're part of the problem." I sat there in Damon's driveway, stunned at the speed of it all. The machine had taken over. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a reckoning. My phone rang again. Gerald. This time, I let it ring. Then I declined it. I knew what he was seeing. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling because the polished life they had curated was cracking in the most public way possible. Then Naomi called. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the screen. I tapped accept, but didn't speak first. "I just saw it," she said, her voice strained. "It's everywhere." "Yeah," I replied, tone flat. And yet nobody stopped it. She exhaled sharply. "It looks bad." "No," I snapped, the words cutting harder than I meant. "It is bad, Naomi. There's no looks about it. Bianca hit our daughter. On camera. In front of your entire family. And you didn't say a damn word." "I was shocked," she murmured. I clenched the wheel, my jaw tight. "You had 5 whole minutes to unfreeze. You didn't." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. Sorry doesn't unslap a child." Silence stretched between us like a chasm. "You were right," she said eventually. "About them. About how I've let them control everything." "Naomi," I said, quieter now, "I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking why it was so hard for you to choose her. Our daughter." Her breath caught. She didn't answer. I hung up. I turned around in the seat, looking at Aubrey, still asleep, still peaceful in the safety of our little cocoon. I stepped out, opened the door quietly, and scooped her into my arms. She stirred but didn't wake, her face tucked into my shoulder. The front porch light at Damon's place flicked on before I reached the steps. The door creaked open, and there he stood in basketball shorts and a hoodie, blinking at me with equal parts confusion and concern. "You good?" he asked. "No," I said, brushing past him. "But I will be." He closed the door behind us and followed me into the guest room. I laid Aubrey gently on the bed, pulled the comforter over her, and kissed her forehead. She didn't stir. We stood in the hallway, and I told Damon everything, the slap, the silence, the phone calls, and now the footage. "You posted it?" he asked. "Not me," I said. "But it's out, and I've got copies." He nodded slowly. "They're not going to take this lying down. I'm not asking them to." "Naomi's family?" he added. "They want to bury it. Gerald already called twice." "What are you going to do?" I stared past him, at the hallway mirror, at the reflection of myself holding back every ounce of anger that threatened to bubble over. "I'm going to make sure Aubrey never has to feel small like that again." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Then you're doing the right thing." That night, I barely slept. I sat in the living room with my laptop, uploading the video to more cloud accounts, adding timestamped captions, compiling screenshots of every threat or denial being made online. I wasn't just holding evidence. I was building a wall of truth. Because the lie they had lived by, that image was everything, had shattered. And the truth was still standing. Her name was Aubrey. And the world finally saw her. When I woke up on Damon's couch the next morning, my back ached and my neck protested every movement, but none of that mattered. What did matter was that I could hear Aubrey humming softly from the guest room, the melody of a lullaby she hadn't sung since she was 5. There was something about hearing her little voice, gentle, shaky, but determined, that anchored me again. She was still here, still whole, and I had done what I needed to do. Removed her from the fire before it consumed her spirit. I padded to the kitchen, barefoot, and found Damon leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee in one hand and his phone in the other. He lifted it toward me wordlessly, showing me the screen. The clip of the slap had now hit 2 million views. Hashtags were multiplying. Hashtag protect black girls. Hashtag ban Bianca. Hashtag she deserved better. There was a petition trending. I padded to the kitchen, barefoot, and found Damon leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee in one hand and his phone in the other. He lifted it toward me wordlessly, showing me the screen. The clip of the slap had now hit 2 million views. Hashtags were multiplying. Hashtag protect black girls. Hashtag ban Bianca. Hashtag she deserved better. There was a petition trending to have Bianca Brooks dropped from her brand partnerships and banned from hosting live events. I took the coffee he handed me, and I drank in silence. By the time Naomi pulled up outside Damon's place just before noon, I was ready. Not calm, not forgiving, but clear. I told Aubrey to stay inside and draw. I'd picked up some art supplies for her earlier. She was elbow-deep in pink glitter glue and paper butterflies by the time I walked out to face Naomi on the porch. She looked tired. The elegant shell I'd always known, flawless hair, designer shoes, eyes that sparkled like they were lit from inside, was dull today. Her eyes were puffy, her face bare, and in her hands she clutched her wedding ring, turning it over and over again like it might spell out a better version of this story. "I just wanted to talk," she said, her voice low. "I figured you would." She didn't speak right away. Her gaze slid past me, to the window where Aubrey's pink glitter artwork now clung proudly to the glass. "I froze," she whispered. "When it happened, I froze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I kept thinking Bianca didn't mean it. She's under pressure. She's overwhelmed. And then my mother, and the crowd." I didn't know what to do. I leaned against the porch railing, crossing my arms. "You didn't need to do anything dramatic, Naomi. You just needed to kneel beside your daughter. Put an arm around her. Say, 'I'm here.' You didn't need to take a side. Just show up." "I know," she said, tears filling her eyes. I hated myself for it the second we left. "But you were already gone, and then everything exploded. I let the silence stretch between us. I was scared," she continued, "of losing both of you, of becoming the one who let it happen. And maybe I thought if I just stayed quiet, things would smooth over." I nodded slowly. "That's the problem. You weren't scared of what happened to Aubrey. You were scared of what your family would think. That's what kept you silent." Naomi winced. "They've always been controlling. Ever since I was little. I guess I learned to survive it instead of confront it." I stepped closer then, not with softness, but finality. "You weren't supposed to stop them, Naomi. You were supposed to stand beside us." She wiped at her face, then held up her ring. "I want to make it right. I'm willing to talk to a therapist. As a family, I'll make a public statement if that's what you need." I looked at the ring. I remembered slipping it onto her finger 10 years ago, my hand shaking, her eyes full of a future we thought we were building together. "I'm not your priority anymore," I said gently. "She is." Naomi nodded, lips trembling. "I want to be in her life. I know I failed her. But please, don't take her from me." "I'm not trying to take anything," I said. "But I'm not letting her be punished for someone else's need to control the narrative." She swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "It means we need therapy. You need to go on record defending your daughter. Not me. Not the family. Her. Or I file for full custody." Her mouth parted slightly. "You'd really take her from me?" "No," I said. "You already did that yourself the moment you watched her cry on the floor and said nothing." She stared at me for a long time, and I could see her wrestling with the truth of that. The guilt, the shame, and the grief. But what she said next wasn't a promise. It was silence. That silence was her answer. I nodded. "Thank you for coming," I said quietly. "But I'm going to do what's best for her, even if that means walking away from you." I opened the door and stepped back inside, closing it gently behind me. Aubrey looked up from her paper mess and grinned. "I made a flower dragon," she said proudly, holding up a twisted creation of wings and petals. I knelt beside her. "That's amazing," I said, kissing the top of her head. "You ready to have lunch?" She nodded. "Can I make peanut butter sandwiches?" "Only if you don't get glue on them." She giggled, already racing for the kitchen. I walked back to the living room and called Joy Casongo, the attorney I'd found through a referral from one of Damon's law school friends. She was sharp, direct, and came highly recommended in child advocacy cases. "I'm ready," I said as soon as she picked up. "You have the footage saved?" "Multiple copies." "You want full custody?" "Temporary for now. If Naomi doesn't step up, I'll push for permanent." Joy didn't miss a beat. "Then I'll draft the emergency petition and file first thing tomorrow. Meet me at the courthouse at 8:30. And bring your daughter." I hung up and looked toward the hallway where Aubrey was now singing to herself, her voice floating between notes like nothing in the world had touched her yet. That's when I knew I had made the right decision. The next morning, Aubrey wore a yellow hoodie and mismatched socks. She held my hand as we walked into the courthouse, eyes wide at the security guards and the polished floors. Joy met us at the steps in a gray blazer and a firestorm of efficiency. She bent down to Aubrey's level and said, "You're very brave, you know that?" Aubrey smiled shyly. "Daddy says I'm his hero." And in that courtroom, with the footage submitted as evidence, Joy's arguments as sharp as a scalpel, and Naomi absent from the bench, I walked out with temporary sole custody. The gavel came down, and the judge's voice echoed, "Mr. Rourke will have full decision-making authority regarding the welfare of the child until further notice." And just like that, I walked away not as someone's husband, but as Aubrey's father. And that was more than enough. The first time I posted the video, I didn't do it out of vengeance. I wasn't trying to humiliate Bianca or Naomi's parents or even Naomi herself. I wasn't out to make headlines or start a war. I posted it because I remembered the look in my daughter's eyes as she asked, "Why did she hit me?" And I knew, if I kept this quiet, if I let it fade into whispers and family apologies behind closed doors, I'd be teaching Aubrey the worst lesson a child can learn, that silence is safer than truth. I clipped the footage. No commentary. No dramatic music. Just the raw moment. Bianca turning, her hand flying, the slap echoing, Aubrey crumpling. Then Darlene's hissed words, and Naomi frozen in the background, hands limp at her sides. I uploaded it to my personal page, captioned with only one line, "She's 10. This is what happened to her last night. Let the world decide." It took exactly 6 hours to go viral. Parenting groups were the first to pick it up, pages filled with mothers and fathers who saw their own children in Aubrey's trembling form. People weren't just reacting, they were furious. They weren't waiting for PR statements or context. They saw enough. A child had been hurt. In public. With witnesses. And no one had stopped it. I watched the shares climb into the hundreds, then thousands. It made its way to Twitter, to TikTok, to YouTube reactions with stitched commentary. There were think pieces titled, "When Influence Masks Abuse," and "Silence Isn't Neutral," the family that watched her cry. By nightfall, #JusticeForAubrey was trending in 4 countries. Then the pushback came. Naomi's family had their own people. Image consultants, friends and media, old colleagues from Gerald's firm. Suddenly, I saw statements floating around, crafted carefully and laced with just enough vagueness to sound diplomatic. Bianca's official response came via her Instagram story. "A very unfortunate incident occurred at my engagement party. I was overwhelmed, emotional, and deeply regret the misunderstanding. Children are unpredictable and accidents happen, but I never intended to hurt anyone. Please give my family space to heal privately." Misunderstanding. My jaw clenched so tightly I thought I might crack a tooth. She'd slapped a child. On camera. And now she wanted the public to believe it was an accident, the kind that comes with a perfectly curated filter and a Notes app apology? That's when my phone rang again. "Gerald, take it down," he said without preamble. "This has gone too far." I was in Damon's kitchen, pouring milk into Aubrey's cereal. She sat at the counter, legs swinging, drawing a sun with 12 uneven rays on her placemat. "No," I said, voice calm. "It hasn't gone far enough. You're destroying her future," he said, tone rising. "Do you have any idea what this could cost her?" "She hit a child," I said. "She did that herself?" She apologized. "No. She made a PR statement." "That's not the same thing." He sighed through the phone. "This could affect brand deals, event invites, her entire career." I laughed bitterly. "Good. Maybe she'll find out what real consequences look like." There was a pause. "You've made your point. You've turned public opinion. You've got custody. Now let it go." I set the phone down for a second to wipe a milk mustache from Aubrey's lip. She grinned up at me, not fully understanding what was happening outside this small, safe kitchen, but trusting me to handle it. I picked the phone back up. "Gerald, let me explain this in a way you'll understand. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this so the next time Bianca raises her hand, she'll remember the last time cost her everything." He hung up without another word. An hour later, I got an email from Darlene, or rather, from her lawyer. A formal cease and desist demanding that I remove the video, retract the post, and issue a statement clarifying that the incident was mischaracterized. I forwarded it to Joy. She replied with a 2-line message. "Received. Already drafting our counter. Tell them to bring it." I posted the letter too, cropped to show the signature block and demand, along with my caption. "This is what they care about. Not the slap. Not the child. The fallout." People were angrier than ever. And this time, it wasn't just about Bianca. It was about power. About how people in high places try to erase pain by calling it inconvenient. People shared stories of similar moments, times they were hurt and told to smile, to behave, to keep the peace. Aubrey became a symbol. Not a headline, but a real girl who cried and was carried away while everyone else watched. Naomi texted me late that night. One line. Did you have to post the letter? I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I had to protect our daughter. You just wanted to protect your sister. No response came after that. I walked down the hall and peeked into the guest room. Aubrey was asleep, one arm thrown over her sketchbook, a new drawing of a superhero with pink shoes and a glitter crown gripped in her hand. I sat beside her and ran a hand through her curls. I didn't know where this road was leading. I didn't know how long it would take for the noise to die down, for the hashtags to fade, for the world to move on. But I knew this. My daughter's dignity wasn't negotiable. And if they wanted a public war to protect their perfect image, then I'd bring one. Because I wasn't fighting to win an argument. I was fighting to make sure my little girl never had to cry alone on a cold rooftop floor again. The first sponsor dropped her within 24 hours. A clean, vague announcement. At this time, we are reevaluating our relationship with Ms. Bianca Brooks and will no longer be collaborating on upcoming projects. Bianca reposted it with a broken heart emoji and a soft pink background, as if sadness and soft tones could soften a slap. But the internet wasn't done, not by a long shot. I watched it unfold from Damon's living room couch, my laptop open, tabs filled with cascading PR disasters. A cosmetic line pulled out. A wellness retreat quietly removed Bianca's face from its promotional materials. Her wedding dress collaboration issued a formal apology to its customers for failing to uphold family-first values. Influencer watchdogs dove deeper, finding other clips where Bianca had made snide remarks about bratty kids or laughed about needing to teach respect. Each clip added fuel to the fire, and there was no putting it out. Naomi's family responded like professionals who'd faced scandal before. A mix of denial, half apologies, and pressure tactics behind the scenes. First came the edited video, posted by one of Bianca's assistants, cropped to start after the slap, with Bianca already wiping her dress. The caption read, "Let's not believe every narrative." They were trying to rewrite what everyone had already seen. Then came the public apology video. Bianca sitting in a sterile, overlit room, wearing a pale blue sweater, no makeup, looking just unpolished enough to be believable. "I was overwhelmed," she said, voice trembling. "That night, I was anxious, exhausted, and I reacted in a way I regret deeply. I love my family. I would never intentionally hurt a child, but even that failed. Because in the age of receipts, intention is irrelevant when the act is on high-definition video with 3 different angles." The comments tore her apart. Not because people enjoy cruelty, but because they saw the face of privilege trying to escape accountability through aesthetics and performance. Meanwhile, I moved differently. I wasn't fighting for likes. I was fighting for my daughter's peace. I hired attorney Joy Kasongo full-time. She came to Damon's place that Tuesday morning with a tote bag full of folders, her glasses perched on her head, and a voice that could cut through concrete. She shook my hand, sat across from me at the kitchen island, and said, "We're going to do more than ride this wave. We're going to anchor it." Joy filed a formal complaint with Child Protective Services, not out of spite, but as documentation. Even if this never escalates, she told me, there needs to be a permanent record. Bianca Brooks is a public figure who struck a minor. That doesn't disappear just because the hashtag slowed down. She drafted a restraining order. It barred Bianca from coming within 300 feet of Aubrey without written legal approval. I signed it without hesitation. Next came the civil claim. Emotional distress, physical trauma, reputational harm. Not to punish Bianca with a dollar amount, but to ensure there was legal acknowledgement that what she did had real consequences. Not just headlines. Court files. Joy also contacted every media outlet that attempted to twist the narrative. "We will not be giving interviews," her statement read, "but we reserve the right to sue for misrepresentation if this child is portrayed as anything other than the victim of a public assault." I stood in the hallway after reading that email and felt something I hadn't in days, steady. Joy handed me one more document, a draft of a letter that would be sent to every school, camp, or public event Bianca attempted to sponsor or attend. It was clinical, factual, and direct. A copy of the video was attached. "This isn't vengeance," Joy said. "It's protection. If she's around other kids, they deserve to know what she's capable of." Aubrey came into the kitchen that afternoon holding a stack of drawings, mostly unicorns and one of a girl with a superhero cape, and the words, "I'm not scared anymore." Joy crouched down and smiled at her. "You're pretty brave, you know that?" Aubrey nodded solemnly. "Daddy says telling the truth is how you stay big inside." Joy blinked. Then she smiled. "He's absolutely right." I tucked that quote away. Something about it made me feel like we'd already won, even if the court battles were still ahead. Naomi's family tried other tactics. First came the plea. Naomi's cousin emailed me asking for a sit-down to clear the air. Then came the threat. An anonymous account sent a DM accusing me of exploiting the situation for fame, trying to flip the script. I ignored them all, but it was Gerald who broke first. He called Joy directly, trying to negotiate. "We'd like to make an offer to resolve things quietly," he said. Joy didn't blink. "This isn't a negotiation. This is accountability." They tried one more move. Bianca's management team released a legal threat, warning that the continued sharing of the video constituted defamation. Joy posted a single line on her public legal blog in response. "Truth, documented and verified, is not defamation. It's evidence." And that was the nail in the coffin. The wedding brand Bianca had partnered with pulled out completely. Her influencer deals were gone. Her reputation, once curated with ring lights and Photoshop, had unraveled thread by thread. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just sat on the porch one evening with Aubrey beside me, watching the sunset over Damon's neighborhood. She leaned her head against my arm and said, "It's quieter now." "Yeah," I said softly. "It is." "What's going to happen next?" she asked. "We live," I said. "We protect each other. And we don't let people hurt us just because they're louder or richer." She thought about that, then nodded. "Okay." That night, I tucked her in and stood at her door for a long time. Because justice, real justice, isn't loud. It's steady, unshakable. A weight that stays long after the cameras are gone. And it had finally found its balance. Naomi's message arrived 2 days after the restraining order against Bianca was granted. It was long, messy, and raw. She'd written it at 2:17 a.m. I could tell from the timestamp. It started with, "I can't sleep anymore," and then it unraveled into paragraphs filled with regret, with what-ifs, with half-confessions wrapped in guilt. She wrote about how she rewatched the video of the slap more times than she could count, how each time it felt worse. She wrote about the silence at her parents' house, how even Bianca had gone quiet, holed up in some PR-managed cocoon where no one could reach her. But the part that hit me hardest came near the end. "They've always been that way, controlling, cold, and I thought I could live with it, manage it, insulate you and Aubrey from the worst of it. But I couldn't. I didn't. I failed you both." For the first time, I believed she meant it. But believing it didn't mean I could forget. The next morning, I called Joy and scheduled a meeting, not in her office, but in a neutral space, a downtown mediation center with soft lights and soundproof walls. Naomi arrived 15 minutes early, looking like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. She wasn't wearing makeup, no jewelry. Her wedding ring was gone. I walked in carrying a folder with one document, a custody agreement, one that gave me full legal and physical custody of Aubrey. It left room for visitation, but only under 3 conditions. 1. Family therapy with a licensed professional. 2. A public statement from Naomi denouncing what happened at the engagement party and affirming her support for Aubrey. 3. Zero involvement from her parents or Bianca moving forward. Joy sat beside me, silent, but her presence was a wall of steel. Naomi sat across from us and read the document with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned each line, and when she got to the conditions, she looked up. "You're serious," she said. "I've never been more serious," I replied. "You want?" "No," I said, my voice tight. What wasn't fair was my daughter being struck and humiliated in front of 200 people while her mother stood there and said nothing. What wasn't fair was you worrying more about your sister's Instagram brand than your child's dignity. You want to talk about fair? Let's start with her. Naomi's lips trembled. "She's all I have. She's not a possession," I snapped. "She's a person you've ignored, neglected, and let suffer so you wouldn't lose favor with people who've been cruel to both of us for years." Naomi folded the document. She didn't sign it, but she didn't tear it up either. She placed it in her lap and stared at the table. "I don't know if I can undo the damage," she whispered. "You can't," I said. "But you can stop causing more." Joy finally spoke. "You have until Friday to make your decision. If you agree, we move forward with this agreement. If you decline, we'll be filing for permanent custody on grounds of failure to protect." Naomi didn't argue. She just nodded and stood. That night, Aubrey asked me a question I wasn't ready for. "Daddy," she said, curling up beside me on Damon's couch, "do you think Mommy didn't love me that night?" I swallowed hard. I think Mommy got scared. I think she froze. "But not loving you?" "No," I think she just didn't know how to protect you when it counted. But that's not your fault. It never was. She nodded, pressing her head against my arm. Okay, but I still love her. I know, baby, I whispered. And that's why you're the strongest person I know. By Thursday, Naomi's silence gave me her answer. She hadn't signed, hadn't posted a statement. She hadn't even responded. Friday morning, Joy and I walked into the family courthouse and submitted the full custody petition. The clerk stamped it without hesitation. I walked out with a copy of the motion in my hands and a heaviness in my chest that no legal wind could lift. But I also walked out knowing this. I had done everything I could. That night, Aubrey and I had pizza on the floor of Damon's living room, her face smeared with marinara, her laughter bouncing off the walls like it had before all of this. She asked if we could get a dog someday. Maybe, I said, smiling. A big one or a small one? She grinned. One that can bark really loud. I laughed. Any reason why? So if anyone tries to hurt us again, they'll be scared. I blinked. Her voice had been so calm when she said it. Matter of fact. Not afraid, just aware. You don't need a dog for that, I said. You've got me. She looked at me then, really looked. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. Relief. Safety. Trust. Naomi called again that Sunday. I let it ring. Because this time, I wasn't waiting for her to show up. Aubrey already had what she needed. A father who wouldn't blink when it mattered. And a future no one could steal. The Monday after the custody hearing, I walked Aubrey into school holding her hand tightly in mine. The hall smelled of dry erase markers and carpet cleaner, but to her, it was a castle. She waved shyly at a few friends, some of whom gave her lingering stares. The video had been everywhere, even among the parents and teachers who tried to pretend they weren't watching. Kids hear things. Kids repeat things. And kids feel when something is different. Her teacher, Mrs. Crandall, met us at the door. A short woman in her early 50s with laugh lines and worry brows, she placed a gentle hand on Aubrey's shoulder. We've got your usual seat, sweetheart, she said softly, then turned to me. She's a brave little girl, Mr. Rourke. One of the most self-aware students I've ever had. I nodded, brushing Aubrey's curls back. That's all her, I said. She's teaching me. Mrs. Crandall smiled. The school counselor wants to see her today, just for a check-in. No pressure. Good, I said. She's been journaling. Drawing a lot, too. I think she'll want to talk. Aubrey squeezed my fingers before walking into the classroom. I watched her settle into her desk, her backpack perfectly upright, her pink pencil case placed like a sacred artifact. She took a deep breath and smiled across the table at another girl who offered a timid wave. When I turned to leave, Mrs. Crandall touched my arm. Whatever you're doing at home, keep doing it. She's steady and kind. That's rare. Outside in the car, I sat for a long while. I didn't cry. I didn't exhale. I just stared at the wheel, letting it sink in how trauma can harden some. But in her case, it sharpened a kind of quiet resilience. She hadn't lashed out once. Hadn't screamed or acted out. She processed it all with crayons and curiosity and this unshakable sense that the world might be broken, but she didn't have to be. That afternoon, I met with the school counselor, Ms. Irene Fields. She had soft gray eyes and a way of making even silence feel safe. She's incredibly thoughtful, she said as we sat across from each other. She didn't talk about Bianca much. She didn't even bring up the slap right away. You know what she talked about? I shook my head. Fairness, Irene said. She said she used to think adults always fix things when something bad happened. And that night, when no one stopped it, she said it made her feel invisible. But then she said something I won't forget. She opened her notepad and read directly from it. My daddy picked me up even though no one else moved. That's how I knew I wasn't small. I felt that line dig into me like a seed taking root. She's got strength, Irene continued. But strength at her age is still fragile. She's walking a tightrope between understanding what happened and trying not to internalize it. She's forgiving, I said. Too forgiving, maybe. She told me she wrote a letter, Irene added. To Bianca. I leaned in. Did she show it to you? She offered to read it out loud. Then she gave it to me and said, if my dad wants it, he can have it. But it's okay if he's not ready yet. I swallowed hard. Can I see it? Irene reached into her folder and slid the small page across the desk. Pink paper. Handwritten in purple marker. Simple blocky letters. Dear Bianca, I don't know why you hit me. Maybe you were mad or scared or just tired. But I didn't mean to spill the punch. I liked your dress. I wanted to be part of the party. I forgive you, but I won't forget. I hope you never do that to anyone again. Even if you're having a bad day. Kids are little, but our hearts aren't. Aubrey. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I read it twice, then 3 times, then folded it gently and tucked it into my coat pocket. That night, I framed it. Not for Bianca. For Aubrey. Because that's what power looks like when it's born from pain. Not loud, not cruel, but clear, firm, soft in tone, but loud in truth. Later that week, Naomi called again. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, her voice said weary. I saw the letter. Ms. Fields emailed me a copy. I don't expect forgiveness. But please tell Aubrey. I miss her. I'd do anything to go back and fix that night. I didn't call back. Instead, I spent Saturday afternoon with Aubrey at the park. She wore a yellow hoodie and a matching ribbon in her hair. She chased pigeons, fed ducks, then sat beside me on the swings while I pushed her gently. Daddy, she said after a while. Yeah, sweetheart. Do you think she'll ever say sorry? Like really mean it? I don't know, I answered honestly. But that's not your job to worry about. It's hers. She nodded. Okay, can we get ice cream now? Absolutely, I said, lifting her into a bear hug and spinning her around until she squealed. We got Rocky Road and waffle cones and sat on the hood of my car under the late afternoon sun. She smeared chocolate on her nose and laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it sounded exactly like it used to. And I knew then that healing wasn't a finish line. It was a rhythm. Some days it was a whisper, others a dance. And sometimes, like today, it was the sound of a little girl licking her ice cream, her legs swinging from the car hood, free again, strong again, unafraid. The request came through Joy late on a Wednesday afternoon. They want a meeting, she said, sliding her glasses onto her forehead and looking at me from across the coffee shop table. Gerald, Darlene, Naomi, Bianca. I didn't flinch. What for? They say they want to make things right before the wedding. I laughed, sharp and humorless. The wedding is still happening. Joy gave a small shrug. Looks like it. Very scaled back. No sponsors, no big brand tie-ins. Just a small venue in La Jolla. They're trying to salvage something. Are they asking for forgiveness or damage control? Joy leaned forward. Honestly, doesn't matter. We don't go in blind. I nodded. Set it up. But I'm not coming empty-handed. 3 days later, I walked into a private room at a boutique hotel downtown with Joy by my side, a black document folder tucked under my arm, and a phone in my pocket already recording audio. Not because I was afraid of being lied to, but because I refused to let anything be rewritten later. The room smelled of old money and desperation. White roses filled a crystal vase in the center of the table. Gerald sat stiffly in a gray suit. Darlene looked thinner than usual, her jaw tight and hands fidgeting in her lap. Naomi stood behind them, arms crossed, eyes flickering with something between guilt and exhaustion. And Bianca, she looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Her makeup was minimal, her eyes hollow, the vibrant sparkle of performance dimmed into something more human. She didn't speak when I entered, didn't even look at me. Thank you for coming, Gerald said stiffly. I sat. Joy placed her briefcase on the table and clicked it open, but didn't pull anything out yet. You asked for this meeting, I said calmly. So talk. Gerald cleared his throat. We want to make amends. We realize how deeply things spiraled, and Joy held up a hand. Put the script. Say what you're here to say. Gerald hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded check. He slid it across the table. I didn't touch it. $75,000, he said. For the emotional distress, the legal hassle, the noise. We're hoping we can all find a path forward. Quietly, Joy raised an eyebrow. So you want to buy peace? We want to stop the bleeding, Darlene said quickly. Everyone's lives have been upended. We've lost friends, partnerships. Bianca's career has flatlined. And we believe. You believe money fixes what character destroyed, I cut in. Naomi looked down. Bianca still hadn't spoken. I slid the check back across the table without looking at the amount again. Keep your money. What I brought is worth more than that. I reached into my folder and pulled out a single document, printed on heavy bond paper with 2 signature lines at the bottom. I laid it flat on the table and turned it toward Gerald. What's this? He asked, frowning. A permanent legal agreement, I said, stating that Bianca Brooks will have no contact with my daughter, Aubrey Rourke, now or in the future. No visits. No events. No appearances. Not in person, Not through gifts, not through letters, and absolutely not through social media. If she sees Aubrey in public, she walks away. You sign this today, or I take the civil case public and add a defamation charge for every vague statement you've allowed to circulate. Darlene's eyes widened. This is outrageous. No, I said, calm and steady. What was outrageous was watching a grown woman slap a child and then stand on a platform pretending she was the victim. What's outrageous is calling my daughter, you people. What's outrageous is expecting us to stay silent just because you had a perfect image to protect. Bianca finally looked up. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know she was behind me. She spilled punch, I interrupted. On your dress. That was her crime. And you struck her like she was a threat to your image. The only reason you're sorry is because you lost everything you care about. She stared at me, speechless. Gerald reached for a pen. Darlene grabbed his wrist. You're going to let him blackmail us? No, I said. I'm going to let you choose. Peacefully sever the connection between Bianca and my daughter, or I ensure every platform she ever applies to work for sees the full unedited footage before they even return her email. Joy added quietly, and just so you're aware, any attempt to violate this agreement will be met with immediate legal response. We've already prepared filings for a no-contact injunction. Naomi finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse. This is what it takes then? No, I said. This is what should have happened the moment it happened. But none of you acted. So I did. There was a long pause. Then, without a word, Gerald picked up the pen and signed. He slid it to Bianca. She stared at it, eyes wet, then signed with a trembling hand. When it was done, I collected the paper and placed it gently back into the folder. Darlene stood. You think you've won? She spat. I rose too, folding my coat over my arm. No, I said, looking her dead in the eye. I just ended the game. As Joy and I turned to leave, Naomi whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't turn back. Don't say it to me, I said. Say it to her, if she ever wants to hear it. We stepped out into the sunlight, the sharp breeze tugging at my collar. Joy clapped me on the shoulder as we crossed the street. Not a bad day, she said. No, I said. A necessary one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Not just as a father, but as a man who'd stood in the fire and walked out carrying what mattered most. It's been 6 months. 6 months since the rooftop. Since the slap. Since the hush money offer, the cease and desist letters, and the petition for full custody. 6 months since Naomi's silence told me everything I needed to know, and since I decided that my daughter would never again be treated like a footnote in someone else's story. Now, we live in Santa Barbara. Just a small beachside home with chip paint and too much sand on the floors, but the kind of space that feels honest. I freelance as a graphic designer, do some branding work for local startups, and coach Little League on weekends. It doesn't sound glamorous when I write it out, but it's the most peace I've ever known. Every morning starts with the same ritual. Aubrey runs into my room at exactly 7:12 a.m., her curls wild and her voice already bubbling with plans, school projects, new sketches, whether she can bring glitter glue in her lunchbox. We make breakfast together. Pancakes if she's in charge, oatmeal if I am. We sit at the table by the window, where the light breaks through in soft strips, and we talk like people who survived a war and refuse to let the silence win again. Naomi and I are finalizing the divorce. It's been civil, unemotional. She visits Aubrey twice a month now, supervised, per the court order. She brings snacks, sometimes tries too hard, and often leaves with glassy eyes. I don't interfere. I don't badmouth her. I simply observe. She's trying, but trying doesn't undo what she didn't do when it counted. Aubrey has changed in ways that both break and mend me. She's stronger, quieter at times, but filled with more conviction than some adults I know. Her school counselor calls her an old soul. She still draws, but now her art tells stories, full scenes with messages tucked into the margins. Girls flying over obstacles, families built from scratch, monsters turned away at the door. She keeps the framed letter she wrote to Bianca on her nightstand, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. When I asked her recently why she still wanted to see it every day, she said, because it reminds me I didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't speak for a whole minute after that. As for Bianca, well, she vanished from the spotlight. All her brand deals evaporated. Her wedding was postponed, then scaled down to a private affair no one live-streamed. And the few times her name pops up in the influencer sphere now, it's never as a tastemaker. It's a cautionary tale, a footnote in someone else's warning. One afternoon in March, I got a letter, handwritten, from Bianca. I sat with it unopened for hours, staring at the envelope like it might bite. When I finally read it, I expected spin, excuses, maybe even another manipulation attempt. But it was quiet, apologetic. She admitted what she did. She said she watched the video over and over, trying to understand the moment her ego had overtaken her humanity. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just said, "I hope Aubrey grows into someone who never lets people like me shrink her." I didn't show it to Aubrey. Not yet. Maybe one day, when she's older and ready. Maybe not. The truth is, that letter wasn't meant for her. It was a mirror for Bianca. And I wasn't about to use my daughter as someone else's therapy. Sometimes, people ask me how it all started. What the moment was that changed the course of everything. I used to say the slap, but that's not quite right. It was the 10 seconds after the slap, when no one moved, when silence spoke louder than any apology could. When Naomi, the woman I once would have followed into fire, stood motionless while our daughter cried on the floor. That was the moment. That's when the truth stepped into the light, unapologetic and impossible to unsee. 10 minutes later, I told Gerald he'd regret it. That footage would live longer than any fake statement they concoct. And I was right. Those 10 minutes exposed everything. Not just what Bianca did, but what Naomi didn't. What Darlene believed. What Gerald was willing to protect. And what I was no longer willing to tolerate. Because fatherhood doesn't start in the delivery room or at birthday parties. It begins the moment your child looks up at you, hurt and confused, and you have to decide whether your love is loud enough to carry both of you through the fire. Mine was. Last week, Aubrey asked if she could enter an essay contest at school. The topic was the person who changed my life. I didn't ask questions. I didn't peek. I just printed the entry form, helped her staple it together, and dropped it off in the bin outside the office. Yesterday, her teacher emailed me a copy. I read it alone, standing in the kitchen with the oven timer going off and a pot of pasta boiling over on the stove. This is what she wrote. "My life changed when I learned that sometimes the people who say they love you won't protect you. But that's okay, because someone else will. My dad did. He didn't yell or make it scary. He just picked me up and carried me away from the people who hurt me. He made me pancakes when I cried. He let me tell my story in drawings. He didn't hide the truth from me, even when it was sad. He's not a superhero. He gets tired. He burns toast. He forgets to sign my reading logs sometimes. But he listens. He sees me. He loves me like the world depends on it. And that's enough to make me feel brave again." I turned off the stove. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Then I printed 2 copies. One for her teacher and one to keep. That night, I tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and told her, "You changed my life, too." She blinked up at me. "Really?" I nodded. "You taught me how to fight with love." She smiled, then rolled over, whispering into her pillow, "Then we're both superheroes now." And she was right. We were. 10 minutes changed everything. But the life we rebuilt, moment by moment, choice by choice, that's the part I'll remember. Not the slap. Not the silence. Not the pain.